Welcome to Revenza Tales, where peaceful moments conceal disturbing realities. Subscribe, like, and share to tell this story around the world. Leave a comment with your city. How far has Deborah's miracle and mystery story reached? In a peaceful Boston suburb, a family's celebration of a miracle baby is tainted by murmurs of skepticism, drawing a mother into a trap of uncertainty. The Wilsons' white two-story house stood tranquil in Boston's green suburbs, backdropped by November's golden leaves. Deborah Wilson leaned against the living room window, hands cradled on her distended belly, breathing slow and measured. The morning air was cool, smelling of damp earth and fallen leaves accumulating in the front yard. This pregnancy, after 7 years of relentless fertility treatments, was a miracle she'd almost given up on. Every morning dawned with a prayer of thankfulness, her heart brimming with affection for the life growing within her. The soft blue nursery up high, prepared with a crib, would welcome Thomas, whom Michael had named for his father. But under her happiness, an unsettling disquiet stirred, like a shadow dancing at the edge of her vision. "Mom, see my science project." Lily's voice was a bright and cheerful one from the living room. Deborah descended the stairs, her steps careful, her hand grazing the banister for support. Her 8-year-old daughter stood proudly beside a solar system model, its planets meticulously crafted. The orbs, painted with care, spun gently on their wire orbits, reflecting Lily's sharp mind and artistic flair. "It's wonderful, Lily," Deborah said, her smile warm, her fingers brushing her daughter's brown curls. "You've captured every detail so beautifully." Lily glowed, her eyes shining with pride, her art and science a subtle wonder. Teachers marveled at her curiosity, her capacity to surprise with understanding beyond her years. "Are you taking it to Dad?" Lily asked, her voice filled with hope. "Will he come in late again?" Deborah's smile wavered, a shadow passing over her face, her hand hesitating on Lily's shoulder. Her husband, Michael, a sales manager for a medical equipment company, was distant now, his trips more frequent. "Dad has a critical client meeting," she said, her tone soft but laced with concern. "He'll be late, but you can introduce him tomorrow morning." Doubts raged inside. Michael's late nights, his exhausted eyes, their talks reducing to short interactions. He appeared excited over Thomas, his hand habitually cradled across her stomach, but something unspoken hung over him in his silences. Deborah pushed the feeling aside, attributing it to pregnancy hormones, her enforced rest at home. She was a curator at the library, living for order, but her doctor's instructions to take work off left her on edge, her mind fixated only on the baby. By the afternoon, the kitchen radiated the aroma of roasted vegetables, a light meal cooking for Lily. Deborah went through her checklist before giving birth, her pen crossing off tasks. Hospital bag in place, baby clothes folded, due date 1 week. The front door creaked open, Lily's footsteps patter, her voice full of excitement. "Dad, see my solar system," she shouted, her excitement filling the home. Michael's laugh followed, tired but warm, his briefcase thumping to the floor. "That's amazing, Lily," he said, his voice carrying a hint of strain. "You've got real talent, kiddo." Deborah emerged from the kitchen, her heart lifting at the sight of her husband, home early for once. His tie hung loose, his shirt collar wrinkled, his face etched with fatigue. He stepped forward, his grin relaxing as he kissed her forehead, his hand skating over her belly. "Early meeting," he whispered, his voice deep, his eyes flashing briefly far away. "How do you feel?" "I'm fine," Deborah replied, her back hurting, her grin firm. "Just some discomfort, but the doctor assures me it's normal." That evening, after Lily was in bed, the living room was subdued, the soft light of the television casting shadows. Michael's arm slung over Deborah, his face buried in her hair, the warmth of his breath against her neck. "I'm so fortunate I met you," he said, his voice abrupt, maudlin, catching her unawares. She turned, her heart racing, the words a fleeting echo of those earlier years. He talked of things after the birth, his parents too far away to go and see, hers too weak to journey. Her friend Carol, her own steady and generous friend, would be her anchor, he said. His voice firm but his gaze remote. Deborah nodded, her own hand tightening on his, though a shiver of apprehension remained, unspoken. Hours passed before a stinging pain woke Deborah, her breath catching, her hands wrapped across her abdomen. Labor had started 7 days early, the contractions fierce and relentless. Michael shifted beside her, his own eyes unfocused, his trip to work looming for the morning. "I'll call Carol," Deborah said, her voice strained through the pain, her phone trembling in her hand. "You should go on your trip, it might take a while." Michael hesitated, his face torn, but nodded, his hands fumbling to pack the hospital bag. Lily appeared in the doorway, her eyes half closed, her voice small. "Mom, Dad, come back soon with the baby," she said, her stuffed rabbit clutched tight. Carol came quickly, her gentle presence a salve as she rode Deborah to the hospital, the city lights rushing by. Contractions cinched, each roller coaster faster than it should have been, the antiseptic smell of the hospital surrounding her. Carol phoned Michael, filling him in as Deborah clung to the bed rails, her body a war zone of pain and possibility. Hours of labor finally ended with Thomas Wilson's small wails, a miracle, in the still delivery room. Deborah cradled him, spent, her heart aching as his tiny chest rose and fell. The sun poured through the hospital window the next morning, brightening her wan face. Postpartum exhaustion clung, but Thomas's gentle breaths in the bassinet near her were a gentle happiness. The door creaked open, and Michael stood there, lilies in his arms, relief lighting his face. He'd returned from his journey, his eyes aglow as he looked at Thomas. "Deborah, you were wonderful," he told her, his voice choked, his hands soft as he swept their son up in his arms. "He's perfect." But Deborah saw a flash in his eyes, a restlessness as he looked out into the hallway. "Is everything all right?" she asked, her voice gentle, her intuition growing. No, everything's fine," he told her hastily, his smile fake, his fingers drumming against his phone. "Just waiting for a work call, they're still bugging me." His answer was reasonable, but a flicker of uncertainty in her heart, her nurse's intuition heightened. A nurse came into the room, her name tag saying Rachel, a bright smile but an odd blade of it. "How are you feeling, Mrs. Wilson?" she asked, consulting Deborah's chart with practiced ease. She smiled briefly at Michael, but he nodded brusquely, his gaze shifting away. "A little better," Deborah replied, her tone calm despite the persistent soreness. Rachel gave her a pill, her actions quick. "This is your pain medicine, take it with water," she said, her voice inappropriately bright. Once Rachel had departed, Michael emerged, grumbling about a business call, his pace fast in the corridor. Deborah took the pill, but a wave of drowsiness suddenly washed over her, more intense than anticipated. Her eyelids drooped, her body sinking into the bed, the room fading to black. She awoke hours later, disoriented, the clock showing past noon. 4 hours gone. A different nurse held Thomas, her voice gentle. "He was hungry, so I've been holding him," she said, passing him to Deborah. "The medication knocked me out," Deborah said, her head foggy, her voice thick. "Yes, Rachel noted it in your chart," the nurse replied, her tone reassuring. "We'll adjust the dosage." That afternoon, nausea gripped Deborah, her heart racing, her skin clammy. She pressed the call button and Rachel appeared, her smile unwavering, her eyes sharp. "I feel sick," Deborah said, her voice weak, her hand clutching the bedrail. Rachel checked her vitals, her hand cool on Deborah's forehead. "Could be a slight fever, common after childbirth," she said, adjusting the 4-bag. She scribbled a note, then reached for her phone, texting a hasty message, her fingers moving fast. Deborah's brow furrowed, a shiver of suspicion rising, the nurse's familiarity disquieting. Carol came with Lily, whose eyes sparkled at her baby brother, her voice full of wonder. "Mom, Thomas is so small," she exclaimed, her small hand stroking his cheek. Deborah embraced her, her heart softening, but her pallor caught Carol's concern. You look pale, Carol said, her brow creasing. Are you okay? Deborah expressed her apprehension. The powerful medication, the queasiness, Rachel's strange behavior. That's strange, Carol said, her voice hushed, her eyes narrowing. You ought to speak with your doctor. Rachel came back, her smile wide as she spoke to Lily. Oh, you must be Lily, she said, her voice excessively warm. Your mom's told me all about your intelligence. Deborah stiffened. She'd never told Rachel about Lily. Lily shrank closer to her mother, her whisper tense. I don't know her, Mom. Rachel handed Deborah another pill, her movements brisk, her eyes avoiding Deborah's. As Carol stepped out to the cafeteria, Lily lingered, her face darkening, her voice low. Mom, I've seen that nurse before, she said, her eyes wide with unease. With Dad 2 weeks ago, when he took me for ice cream after school. Deborah's heart skipped, her breath suspended, her mind spinning. What do you mean? She asked, her voice not quite level. They were discussing outside, serious, like they didn't want me to overhear, said Lily, her fingers ringing. Michael had taken a late night at work that day. His briefcase missing when she'd phoned. That night, Michael dropped by for a few minutes. His smile strained, his eyes flicking down the hall. As he departed, Deborah caught his deep, insistent voice speaking to someone just outside the door. The hospital room was dark, the quiet thrum of machines a distant background to Deborah Wilson's whirling thoughts. She rested in her bed, her postpartum body sore, her mind shrouded in disquiet that kept sleep at a distance. Thomas, her baby boy, slept quietly in the bassinet next to her, his small form a tenuous anchor. Moonlight streamed through the window, bathing the sterile floor in harsh shadows. Deborah's heart seethed with Lily's words from the day before. I saw Dad with that nurse. Michael's fidgety looks, his abrupt dismissal of her suspicions, now were pieces of a puzzle she could not overlook. The thought of him with another woman, particularly Rachel, her too familiar nurse, teased like a knife in her chest. A throbbing headache beat behind her eyes, her body still recovering from the birth, her mind balancing on the brink of paranoia. The morning light crept in, illuminating the room in soft gold, but Deborah's thoughts were clouded. The morning vital nurse came in, her movements efficient, her name tag bearing Sarah. Rachel's working afternoon, Sarah stated, checking the 4, her voice matter-of-fact. Deborah nodded, observing that her head felt more alert, the painkiller's dosage apparently cut. The attending physician followed, his clipboard in hand, his brow furrowed as he reviewed her chart. Your recovery's progressing, but the fever and nausea concern me, he said, his voice calm but firm. We'll run another blood test to be safe. Deborah managed a weak smile, her hand resting on Thomas's bassinet, her heart heavy with unspoken fears. After the doctor left, she reached for her phone, her fingers hesitating before dialing Michael. He picked up on the 3rd ring, his voice short, preoccupied. Deborah, what's wrong? He inquired, a distant rustling over the line. Are you ill? I'm fine, she lied, making an effort to keep her tone even, though her chest constricted. Can you bring Lily by to see me today? A staccato burst of breath crackled along the line, then a silence. That's difficult today, he replied, his voice uncooperative. I have a business meeting. Deborah's heart dropped, her disappointment cutting, her voice shaky but barely. I see, she said, her hands wrapping tightly around the phone. Speak to you later. She hung up, slumping into the bed, her eyes following the sterile tiles of the ceiling. Was she right, or was postpartum haze obscuring her thoughts? Rachel came in at lunchtime, her smile shining but her eyes icily hard, like glass reflecting the light. She held a tray, a pill sitting next to a glass of water, her movements too precise. This is an antibiotic at the doctor's request, she said, her voice syrupy, her eyes evading Deborah's. It'll stop infection. Deborah glared at the pill, her heart thumping, her memory good. The doctor hadn't said anything about antibiotics. Did he write out this prescription? She said, her voice firm but inquiring, her hand gripping the bedrail. Rachel hesitated, a flicker of unease crossing her face before her smile returned. "Yes, it's in your chart," she said, her tone too quick, her fingers adjusting the tray. Deborah held the pill, her suspicion growing, her intuition screaming. "I'll take it later," she said, her voice firm, her eyes locked on Rachel's. "I want to eat first." Rachel's smile faltered, a flash of irritation in her eyes, but she nodded. "Okay, I'll check back," she said, her steps crisp as she departed. Deborah hid the pill inside the bedside drawer, her heart racing, her uncertainty a reality. Something was amiss. By afternoon, Carol came with Lily, whose small clump of daisies brightened up the antiseptic room. Lily went to Deborah, encircling her with her mother, her voice gentle with anxiety. "Mom, are you all right?" she asked, her brown curls framing her worried face. Deborah hugged her tightly, her smile strained, her eyes shadowed with unease. "I'm fine, sweetheart," she said, though her heart betrayed her words. Carol lifted Thomas, rocking him gently, her brow furrowing as she studied Deborah. "You look pale," she said, her voice low, her eyes searching. "Everything all right?" Deborah hesitated, then shared her concerns. The heavy medication, Rachel's odd familiarity, the unverified pill. Carol's frown deepened, her hand pausing on Thomas's blanket. "Something is odd," she said, her voice guarded. "You should speak with your doctor." Lily stood near the bed, her face darkening, her tiny hands wringing the stems of the bouquet. Carol went out to purchase refreshments, leaving Deborah and Lily alone, the silence in the room broken only by Thomas's gentle respirations. Lily moved closer, her voice barely audible, her eyes wide with terror. "Mom, I saw that nurse today," she whispered, her voice barely above a whisper, her eyes flicking toward the door. "With Dad down the hall when we got there." Deborah's heart skipped a beat, her breath catching, her fingers clenching Lily's. "When?" she whispered, her voice husky, her heart racing. "Just now," Lily replied, her voice shaking. "They didn't see us, but she seemed creepy, Mom." She inched closer, her whisper frantic. "Told Dad. We're going to do it today." Dad said. "Not yet." Deborah's blood chilled, her thoughts racing. Lily's words a chilling verification of her terror. "What do you mean, frightening?" she asked, trying to keep her voice level despite the fear growing inside her. Lily's eyes sparkled, her voice barely above a whisper. Her face, it was angry, like she wanted to hurt someone. Voices were heard outside in the hallway, quick and imperative, snapping Deborah's head around to the door. Lily's eyes widened, her slender body tightening as she flitted to the window. With a firm pull, she closed the heavy curtains, the room darkening, the shadows gathering at their feet. "Lily, what are you doing?" Deborah demanded, her voice softened, her heart racing. "She's coming," Lily whispered, her complexion pale but determined. Her eyes filled with a knowledge that belied her 8 years. "Mom, get under the bed now." Deborah's heart pounded, her daughter's desperation triggering her instincts, her agony forgotten. She scooped up Thomas, his little body warm against her, and hauled the four-stand, its wheels creaking softly. "Lily, you too," she instructed, her voice firm, her hands shaking as she knelt down. She inched under the bed, Thomas held tight, her postpartum body protesting at each movement. Lily crawled alongside her, her tiny body pressed against her mother, her breathing rapid and shallow. The door to the hospital room creaked open, soft footsteps, slow and deliberate. Deborah gently rocked Thomas, her lips against his forehead, praying he wouldn't make a sound. Lily gripped her arm, her body shaking, her eyes wide with terror but firm with determination. The footsteps halted close to the bed, the smooth of sheets snapping into silence. "Where did she go?" a female voice whispered, Rachel's, husky with irritation. Deborah's heart was pounding, her breath caught, her grip on Lily's hand tightening. Lily's small hand clamped over her mother's mouth, a silent threat, her eyes blazing with bravery. Deborah nodded, the appreciation for the quickness of her daughter a flash of hope in the midst of fear. Rachel punched the nurse call button, her tone crisp. "The patient has escaped," she said, her words crisp, urgent. Heavy footsteps entered, a man's voice shattering the tension. Michael's, tight and panicked. "What are you doing?" he snapped, his tone cutting. "Where is Deborah?" Rachel's voice sank, low and sinister, a cold edge that made Deborah's blood freeze. "Your barrier will soon disappear," she spat, her voice heavy with purpose. "With one injection." Deborah's breath was stuck, her arms clenching Thomas, her heart a pounding terror. "Having an affair with you? What are you talking about?" Michael insisted, shaking, his steps receding. "We schemed it, Michael," Rachel replied, her voice laced with insanity. "You, me, the baby. We don't require your wife." Deborah's reality swirled, the deceit a blow to her body, her head racing at the words from Rachel. Thomas shifted, a soft whimper leaving his lips, and Deborah kissed him softly, her heart entreating silence. Lily's face was pale, her eyes glistening with tears, but her small body remained still, brave. From under the bed, Deborah saw Rachel's white nursing shoes, Michael's polished leather ones, inches apart. Michael's voice rose, angry, desperate. "I only wanted to end things," he said, his tone raw. "I never agreed to hurt anyone." Deborah's heart flickered with relief. Michael's affair was real, but he wasn't part of this deadly plan. But Rachel's shoes moved, her voice shaking with anger. "You promised me a future," she spat venomously. "If she's dead, we can be a family. Are you out of your mind?" Michael bellowed, his footsteps receding further. "I said I wanted to break off our affair, not harm Deborah or Lily or the baby." Deborah's body went rigid, his words on her lips a betrayal, her heart breaking all over again. Lily's quiet tears moisten her arm, her tiny hand gripping Deborah's, her bravery unshaken. Deborah's gaze is fixed on the nurse call button tied to her wrist, a lifeline to sanity. Lily nods toward it, her eyes firm, her wordless encouragement prompting action. Deborah's hand shakes as she pushes it, her heart pounding, time running out. Rachel's shoes pace, her voice escalating, unglued. "You promised," she cries, her voice desperate, perilous. Deborah clasped Lily and Thomas tight, her breathing shallow, her determination strengthening. The truth was coming out, and survival rested on her daughter's courage and her own strength. The hospital room was a darkness-coated cocoon, the air heavy with tension, the whir of machines a distant pulse. Deborah Wilson stooped beside the bed, her postpartum body throbbing, her arms wrapped tight around baby Thomas. Lily held her tight, her little body shaking, her eyes big with fear but burning with determination. Rachel's white nurse shoes paced alongside, her voice icy and harsh, slicing through the quiet. "Break up with me," she spat, her words dripping with venom aimed at Michael. "Didn't you tell me things weren't going with your wife? You didn't want another child." Michael's voice was calm now, his leather boots falling back a little on the tile floor. "I said that under stress," he conceded, his voice thick with remorse. But looking at Thomas changed everything, his son. Deborah's heart twisted, a tangled mess of betrayal and relief. Her husband's adultery certain but his desire to shield them apparent. "Rachel, quiet down," Michael insisted, his voice tight but strained. "Nothing irrevocable has occurred. Lower the syringe." Rachel's heels moved forward, her voice icily calm, a lethal edge under it. "It's too late, Michael," she stated, her words measured, unstrung. "Deborah's sickness, the overdoses, I staged it all." She stopped, her voice sounding near triumphant. "No one will suspect a postpartum complication." Deborah's blood went icy, her air catching, Thomas stirring restlessly in her arms. Michael gasped, his voice cracking with horror. "Are you crazy?" he shouted, his feet moving back further. "Love leads men to madness," Rachel responded, her voice otherworldly calm. "If you loved me, you'd know. This is for our future." Deborah's thoughts sped frantically, her fingers closing hard on the nurse call button that had been strapped to her wrist moments before. She'd called out, but how long would it take for them to come? Her heart thumped, her body frail but her determination iron, fueled by protection for Lily and Thomas. Rachel's tone increased in intensity, her shoes creeping closer. "If you won't come with me, you're an obstacle too," she spat, her voice deadly. A struggle broke out, shoes scraping against the floor, a thump as something, a tray maybe, struck the ground. Michael groaned in agony, his voice frantic. "Rachel, stop," he bellowed, the tussle growing wilder. Lily's hand clamped over Deborah's arm, her little body shivering, her eyes brimming with fear. Deborah clenched her daughter's hand, her mouth lightly grazing Thomas's forehead, praying for silence. The door swung open, heavy footsteps rushing in, new voice slicing through the din. "Is everything okay?" A nurse cried, her voice urgent. "The call button." She halted, her voice rising in amazement. "Rachel, what are you doing? Don't interfere." Rachel bellowed, her voice frayed, her shoes shuffling as though lunging. "Security now," the nurse cried, her call ringing down the corridor. Several footsteps boomed in, a chorus of voices and movement filling the room. "She's got a syringe," someone yelled, followed by a clatter as something hit the floor. A man's voice, calm but authoritative, broke through. "It's safe, we've restrained her." Deborah's chest heaved, her breath shallow, her arms tight around Thomas and Lily. "Lily, it's okay now," she whispered, her voice trembling but resolute. "Let's come out." She slid from under the bed, her body protesting. Thomas cradled close, Lily's hand in hers. She stood, her legs trembling, greeted by shocked faces. 2 nurses, 2 guards, and Michael. His face was scarred, his shirt ripped, his eyes wide with horror and humiliation. Rachel fought against the guards, her hair tangled, her eyes blazing with fury. A syringe on the floor, its needle shining in the faint light. A silent warning diffused. "Deborah," Michael stuttered, his voice cracking as he saw her step out. We ducked under the bed. Lily's voice tiny but distinct, her eyes locked on Rachel. "I was afraid of her." Rachel's struggles grew more desperate, her voice a snarl. "You ruined everything," she spat, her eyes on Deborah. "We could have been happy." The guards tightened their hold, leading her out, her screams echoing down the hallway. The hospital room hummed with pandemonium, administrators called, police sirens growing closer outside. Deborah, Lily, and Thomas were transferred to another room, the clean lines of which were in sharp contrast to the horror they had left. A medical safety manager came, her expression stern as she explained. "The syringe had a fatal amount of morphine," she told them, her tone low. "Sorry. Rachel Collins was recruited 2 months ago with forged qualifications." She hesitated, looking at Deborah. Her history of psychiatric problems and responsible for the same situation at other hospitals. Deborah touched Lily's hair, her fingers shaking, her heart full of the truth. "Why me?" she whispered, her husband asleep in her arms. The manager sighed, the tone heavy. "Police discovered that she had a brief affair with your husband, taking information about your household." She paused, her tone softening. "She aimed at you in your delivery, playing with your care." Michael stood outside the doorway of the new room, his regretful face, his clenched hands. Deborah looked at him, her eyes cold, her heart a tempest of pain and betrayal. "Let me tell you," he said, coming inside, his low, pleading voice. "Lily, can you wait outside?" Deborah softly asked, stroking her daughter's cheek. Lily nodded, anxious but trusting eyes, following a nurse out into the hallway. "I met Rachel 3 months ago," Michael started, his voice weighted, his eyes cast down. "A mistake, a lapse. I broke it off a month ago." He hesitated, his hands trembling. But she refused to release her hold on me. She was crazed, obsessed. Deborah's tone was frigid, her gaze unyielding. "Your error could have killed us," she said, her tone cold, her heart shattering. "I can't forgive that." Michael's head dropped, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't want forgiveness," he said, his eyes shining with tears. "But for Lily and Thomas, let me set things right." Deborah stepped over to the window, the Boston skyline a blur through her tears. "I need time," she said, her voice firm but rough. Currently, my children need to come first. Michael nodded, speechless, and departed, his steps ponderous down the hallway. 3 months hence, spring sun bathed the porch of Deborah's new residence, a small bungalow in Boston's suburbs. Lily giggled in the garden, running after butterflies, her brown curls bobbing in the wind. Thomas slept in Deborah's arms, his soft breathing a silent beat of hope. The house was smaller, walls plastered fresh with paint, a sanctuary for mending their broken hearts. Rachel Collins had been diagnosed with delusional disorder and borderline personality disorder. In a state facility, her brief romance with Michael had stoked a deadly fixation, police said. She'd fabricated documents to work at hospitals, a history of such scams, fantasies about marrying Michael with a family life together gone out of control. Lily went to counseling twice a week, her strength and resilience displayed, her pride in being a little hero increasing. She still awoke from nightmares, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mom, I did the right thing, didn't I?" Deborah would cradle her, her voice firm. "You saved us, sweetheart," she'd tell her, her heart full of pride. The divorce was complete, Michael on the West Coast now, his career relinquished, his visits to Thomas none. He called Lily every month by phone, his voice tense but tender, their connection tentative but healing. Deborah had gained sole custody, her attorney's advice a lifeline during the maelstrom of the law. In Carol, she'd discovered a part-time job at a neighborhood library, its children's stories a delight that grounded her. Carol emerged on the porch, 2 cups of tea steaming in her hands, a warm smile on her face. "Thought you could use this," she said, sitting beside Deborah, her presence a solid comfort. Since the accident, Carol had been a rock, providing childcare, her weekend visits a ritual of support. "I couldn't have gotten through this without you," Deborah whispered, her voice gentle, her eyes on Lily's giggles. Carol shook her head, her hand clamping Deborah's. "You're stronger than you realize," she said, her voice firm. "And Lily, she's a hero." Deborah looked at her daughter, now kneeling beside a flowerbed, her small hands pursuing a butterfly. "She saved us," Deborah replied, her voice heavy with thankfulness, her heart mending stitch by stitch. Lily came running up, her eyes shining, her voice chattering. "Mom, look, a butterfly," she exclaimed, her arms extended toward the blue above. "Can I hold Thomas?" Deborah smiled, passing her son into Lily's arms, who kissed his forehead softly. "I'll always keep you safe," Lily whispered, her voice a vow, her little arms firm. Deborah observed her children, their connection alight in the midst of suffering, their future cloudy but promising. Family didn't always mean blood, she understood. It meant trust, strength, and the determination to reclaim. Lily's bravery had broken the deceptions, creating an unbreakable connection between them, a platform for what lay ahead. This is Revenza Tales, where strength reveals the truth behind whispers of uncertainty. The names and location have been altered to guard those implicated. We share with you this tale to consider how much strength it takes to endure betrayal and defend those we love. What would you do in Deborah's shoes? Would you listen to your instincts or override them as fear? Leave a comment with your opinion and your city. How far has this story traveled? Like, subscribe, and share to help these stories live on. On your screen, discover 2 of our most powerful stories, set to awaken your soul. Thank you for participating. May courage and trust lead you to better days. God bless.